Hello and welcome to Arts for the Masses. The arts are alive in Massachusetts and I'm the lucky guy who gets to bring them to you. Now, almost every drama student at some point in their education is either gifted or picks up one of the essential books of English language and culture, the justly famous First Folio of Shakespeare plays that won the admiration of actors and scholars around the world. It is a book containing 36 plays by William Shakespeare. It is the very first collection. It was registered for publication in November of 1623. 2023 is its 400th year. Now, in the studio with me today, I have some folks from Ghostlight Players in Marlborough, Massachusetts, who are mounting a production of The Book of Will by Lauren Gunderson. And I'd like to welcome you to the studio. It's my first time having you here, right?
Thank you, yes.
Excellent. On my right, first we have Kat Alex Gaudreau, and she is the founder and artistic director of Ghostlight Players. Next to her, we have actress Jen Drummond, who plays the role of Henry Condell in the play. And then also we have Lori Rabeler, and she is the costume designer for the show. So welcome to Arts for the Masses.
Thank you.
So I just mentioned all this big history about Shakespeare.
Yes.
We're coming up on a big
Very
anniversary. Well, of course, it was all on the teleprompter. I didn't have that memorized. So was that part of your inspiration, perhaps, in picking this particular show right here, right now?
So that was part of it. A few years ago, I went and had the really exceptional privilege of getting to study at the Shakespeare Institute in Stratford-on-Avon. And just developed, I already had a deep love of Shakespeare, but really got to dive into what went into creating those plays and what England was like at the time and the theater industry, which was a fascinating industry at that point in time. And so I've always had that kind of in my mind as such an interesting aspect to the stories and to the creation of the First Folio. And then last year, the other two founders and I, Kim Boscheman and Cliff Dyke, we were having dinner together, as we do, and chatting about what we wanted to do next. It's been a while. The pandemic sort of threw us a monkey wrench.
We're not dwelling on that.
Exactly.
But we're back.
So yes, we're back, but it's been 3 years for us since we've done a show. And so we were trying to figure out what would be the perfect show for us. And I was thinking about Shakespeare. Do we do a full Shakespeare production? Do we want to do something a little different? And then there was a symposium about the 400th year of the publishing of the First Folio, and this play got mentioned, The Book of Will, and I had never read it, but I was already a Lauren Gunderson fan, the playwright, so I thought, well, I better read that book.
Sure.
So I went and I got the script and just fell in love with it, and immediately had another dinner with Kay and Cliff and said, this is it. This is the script that we come back with. It has all of the elements that I love about a play. It has a big ensemble cast, lots of juicy roles, fun moments, funny moments, bittersweet, sad moments. It really covers the wide experience of people going through something. And what they're going through is the compilation of the First Folio of Shakespeare's work. And that just, there's so much in there. Lauren Gunderson really did her homework because there's so much in there that is historically accurate, but you would never know it unless you had kind of dug into how plays were written in that time.
So all those Easter eggs that are
Yes.
real Shakespeare aficionado.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, that's right,
Yes.
that's right. Oh, that person is real.
Exactly.
So Jen, you're playing a real person who actually existed.
Indeed.
And was part of this process of gathering all of these scripts together. What's it like playing this character and diving into their life?
Henry is just, I mean, it's remarkable. Henry was not on the radar for me the first time I read the play. I knew Kat was going to go in a very fun direction and possibly do some gender bending and just kind of eliminate that altogether and just let us be these people.
Right.
But the more and more I get into it, I was just like, oh gosh, like Henry did so much is the reason.
Well, I have no idea who Henry was. So can you give me a little historical context, or even in the context of the play?
Sure, sure. He was one of the King's Men, which is the acting troupe that performed at the Globe Theatre.
Okay.
Sort of one of the founding members with John Hemmings. Richard Burbage is a name of a very famous actor that a lot of people might be more familiar with. And founded this troupe and was on stage and was part of this just wonderful group of people that even after Shakespeare passed away, still carried on, and realizing that there needed to be a way to continue to have this work. And we talk about how Lauren Gunderson gives us these little Easter eggs. She does educate you in the sense of what it was like back then, is that you didn't get a whole play and say, oh, we're doing a show this week, here's the script. You just got your specific lines.
I think Samuel French or MTI used to do that all the time. And you'd get your lines for Lil Abner, and you'd be like, you just get your cue line.
Yes.
Right.
And it was
Right.
very disorienting, but it wasn't until you were in the room with everyone else that it really was that live, in the moment, acting and reacting, because you were actively listening to see when you would say your next line. So that must have been a really interesting experience.
But you might never know how the show ended until you all got up there together to do the thing. It's wonderful. It's been wonderful finding who Henry was. And
in the context of the play, did these friends of Shakespeare and these performers, they felt the relevance of the words that they had done? They knew that there was something significant? I've done new play readings and I said, well, this should never have a life again. Right. And you've done other things where you said, this could go on, and someone could, in this context of the play, do they feel something?
The opening of the show is us reveling in someone trying to do a ripoff of Shakespeare badly. Just saying, oh gosh, no, it's not like that, because there is such a passion and a love for it. Just say, what have they done with this? This is how it should be done.
Yeah.
Remember when we did it that way? And it's just this deeply rooted passion and love.
Now, I'm curious what your vision is for the show overall. We have our costume designer here. Are we drawing from a historically accurate point of view, or what are we doing here? That's true. I don't want to see. We're not going to see no pantaloons.
Do that, and there's no way when you try to be historically accurate that it's correct, right?
You'll never succeed.
Yeah, right. And Kat is very good at being creative with that. And at Ghostlight, one of the things I like about it is it's about the production, about the story, not about the gorgeous costumes and things like that. So when Kat and I were first talking about the play, I said my goal as a costumer these days, post-pandemic, is to reuse as much as I can. So I'm not spending a lot of money creating more clothing that's just going to be put in a closet somewhere.
Right.
And that made us decide to let's pull from the closet at Ghostlight, and so the costumes will all have elements of all the shows of the past.
Oh.
So so it's going to be, the usual basic white shirt, black pants kind of thing, and then maybe a ruff here or a collar there, and all done with stuff from the closet.
That's really lovely, because I've heard in some reviews of the piece that this actual piece is a real love letter to Shakespeare. And here you are grabbing pieces from the history of this company to pull onto stage. Now, we do have to announce that this might be, this is your last performance that you're going to be doing here in Marlborough.
Yes.
Why did you make that decision?
So I know we're not talking about the pandemic, but that changed all of our lives, I think, in ways that we still don't even realize yet. And when we came out of that, and the three of us, Kim Boschman, Cliff Dyke, and myself, we're the founders. We're the ones who started this thing 11 years ago. More out of, we just want to hang out and do a fun show together than any grand ideas about, we'll create this thing that will last many, many years. We just wanted to do something together. And when we came out of the pandemic, we had that same sense of we want to come back together. We want to do something together with the people we enjoy, doing things that we love. But our lives have changed since we started this production. Since we started the production company, certainly. And also the pandemic changed a lot. So in looking at that, some of us don't even live in the same state anymore, jobs and retirement, all things have changed in our lives. And so rather than sort of fight against that, what we decided to do instead is let's do one last show and just do everything that we want to do with it, with wonderful people, have an amazing experience, and then we will sort of let that be our swan song as Ghostlight players. And in a few years, if we wanted
Who
to do
knows?
something else, there's no law that
Right.
says we can't. So,
Absolutely.
but we're just going to let the future kind of take care of itself for now. So.
Now, our viewers who are watching this program right now, they might not realize that I film Arts for the Masses here at WMCT TV, right in the heart of Marlborough, and you perform right down the street. What's the location?
We're at the First Church in Marlborough, so we're right next door.
Have you been there the whole 11 years?
Whole 11 years. We actually started the company because of the First Church of Marlborough.
Well, tell me more.
So, I don't know if you two know this story.
I don't know that I do.
So
Carry on.
Yeah, let me tell you. So years ago, Kay and Cliff and I were sort of hiring ourselves out to other companies. Me as director, Kay as stage manager, and Cliff as producer. And we would go and work for these other companies all around the state and do shows with them. And whenever you're trying to fit into a different company, you have to do things the way they do it, which is totally fair. But after doing this a few times, we thought, gosh, we really just want to do our own thing. We just want to do it the way we want to do it.
Sure.
And Kay and I were driving, oh gosh, at that point, we were driving like an hour each way. And we were commuting together to a rehearsal. And she said to me, you know what we should do? We should just start our own theater company. And I said, oh, sure. That's great. What a great idea. We'll totally do that. And 3 weeks later, we get a phone call from George Pellerin, who is a member of the Men's Fellowship right here at First Church of Marlborough. And that's where Kay attends church. And he called her up and said, hey, the First Church has a little stage, a theater space. And you do theater, right? So we want you to come and do theater here. Which is amazing because the biggest obstacle usually to starting any kind of theater project is a space, is having a space, right?
And rent can be astronomical.
Astronomical.
To rent a middle school auditorium,
Right.
It could
Yes.
cost more than the rights for the show.
Yes, and usually does. And so we said, well, okay, let's see. And so we put together a proposal that really was not financially in their best interest in any way, but we had nothing.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, we're willing to do, we'd love to come and do theater here. Here's what we can do, which isn't much, but we're very happy to donate part of our proceeds of every show back to the Men's Fellowship, and we'll be good tenants. And they just were wonderful. They opened up the church fellowship hall to us. We actually now have a storage room there as well. And they just became our home.
Wow.
And they're very good about letting us come in and use the space, transform the space for shows, and they all come to see our shows. It's just been a wonderful relationship.
Well, you will be missed in Marlborough.
Thank you.
Now, I understand you are an OG members of the company, but you have performed in lots of other shows here, and you were just telling me about an opportunity where Ghostlight went on tour.
Yes, not just any tour. So we had done Hamlet back in 2016.
2016.
We did the full version of the show, and there was something, the stars aligned on this show. There was something about this cast, this crew, and everything just came together beautifully. And Kat came to us. She said, how would you guys feel about taking a somewhat condensed version of Hamlet to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh in Scotland? And we all went, yes, where do we sign? So we did Hamlet 2.0, which was, how long did it run?
90 minutes.
90
we had to cut it
minutes.
down to 90 minutes.
Yep.
And
Not a small feat.
No. And we all traveled to Scotland together and performing at Fringe. I don't know, have you ever been?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, it is just, the whole month of August in Edinburgh is just taken over by artists and art and theater and dance and music, and you're just surrounded by like-minded, incredible, creative performers, and you can see and be a part of so many experiences, and it was just remarkable and maybe one of the top 5 experiences of my life, which is fine, but it was just wonderful.
I'd like to get back to the show a little bit more because that's what we're here to talk about. What are some of the major themes that you get to emphasize as the director? You get this script in front of you, but then it's up to you to really shape what you want to emphasize and what you want the audience to potentially take away from it. What's your goal here?
So for me, whenever I'm approaching any show, that's what I'm looking for, is what's the conversation that I want to have. When I first started, it was more about what's the message that I want to give them. But I've learned over time that theater is a conversation, and it's a conversation always between the performers and the audience. And the audience, you can't do theater without the audience, right?
You can try.
You can try, but it doesn't go so well. So when I was looking at this script, I thought, okay, what's the conversation? And for me, at this point in my life, in my artistic career, I wanted to have a conversation about family, about legacy, and about the way we move through times that are hard and what are the things that sustain us. So in this show, I feel like those things are family, whether it's the family you're born into or the family you make. And we have many characters that have both things, right? Like Henry has created a beautiful family for himself. And also there are some characters who aren't born into beautiful families, but create beautiful families along the way. And they go through some very hard times in the show. Even though there's a lot of comedic moments, it's very reflective of life. And there's a wonderful speech by one of the characters, and without giving away, any spoilers, she, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she says, these words are not yours. They're not even Will Shakespeare's. They're ours. They're our words, and we use these words to interpret the world. So we need these words. So you have to go put them all in a book so that we can have them. And that just really resonated with me, that idea of this is for everyone, and we use theater and art to make sense of the world. And so what an incredible gift to have these words as a way to interpret our own world.
That's really interesting. I'm here at the TV studio. I often think of what we do as of an archival nature as well, and preserving the history of Marlborough in our special way. A picture is worth 1,000 words, a video is worth so much. And what seems so common to other people, you're going to film another parade, another Labor Day parade. But it's not. It might not be important right this moment, but it's important 15, 20, 100 years from now, if you preserve it and keep it somewhere safe that people can access in the future, it can be very special to someone. So the fact that in this story, people have had this experience where they were so close to these words that they wanted to keep them, and that they happened to affect the whole world is amazing.
Yes.
And mothers do things all the time. They have their scrapbook of their children, and that whole scrapbooking craze.
Yes.
And maybe that won't affect the whole world, but you never know.
You never know. There's several moments in the play where that very thing, where someone's squirreling away a script under their bed, is like, and now we have Romeo and Juliet. Whereas before we might not have had that script because so many scripts were lost.
And I was even reading about the folio that when it came out, there were plays that had never been published before that suddenly the public had access to. And was Romeo and Juliet one of them?
Romeo and Juliet had not been published before. There was quite a few of them because back then they didn't publish plays.
No.
The playwrights would write the plays for the playhouses and sell it to them, and then that was it. They didn't have the rights to them anymore. The playhouses that purchased them owned those scripts. And if they decided to do something with them, that was their business. So prior to that time period, plays had never been published that way before. It just started happening right around the time when they decided to put the first folio together. And Will Shakespeare was already dead for 3 years when that was published. So he never published anything.
Wow.
In fact, if anybody ever says to you, well, William Shakespeare said thus and such, they are mistaken. because we actually don't know. He never wrote anything down. Other than his plays, we have nothing from him. We have no journals, we have no letters, there's nothing like that from him.
Not a love letter?
Nope, not a single word. We don't even know if his signature is his signature.
Wow.
So like this project that his friends and business partners came together to create, it starts as something for them, right? Something to preserve their own legacy. But then little did they know, I mean, the first folio, other than the Bible, is the most published book in history.
Wow. Now I have a question for all of you as artists. And we're talking about preserving, and I always think of theater as something that's that fleeting moment in Camelot that exists on the stage for a moment for an audience, and then it is gone. So how, and oftentimes there's so many rules with the legality of filming a show that you don't often have those preserved memories. Do you keep photos of the costumes you've designed, and how do you preserve that memory, or does it just live in your mind?
I always have, pictures of the costumes and everything, mostly for my portfolio,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But as I said, I tear costumes apart and use them for something else. So you can't recreate it by looking at a picture, right? You need the audience, you need the actors, you need the energy.
And I love filming stage productions. I love it, absolutely love it. But you can never quite capture, because when you're filming a stage production, I'm forcing the audience to look at what I think they should look at. But when you have 20 people on stage, or even 2 people on stage, it's up for them to make those choices, and up to them how they fill in the gaps with their imagination and enjoy the show. It feels wrong sometimes to force them at what to look at. I'm like, you're going to look at whoever's speaking right now, but the person who's reacting might be doing a lot more. Yeah. Now you're talking about pulling these costumes. Are there any particular pieces that Henry Condell will be wearing in the show?
Well,
you've got your fingers crossed for something.
When she played Ophelia, when we went, and we are trying to find the dress that she wore for Ophelia, because it was a gorgeous gown. And we'll be remaking that into something for Henry Condell. And one of the pieces that the actor who played Hamlet, when we went to the Fringe, we're going to use on a character that plays a poorly interpreted
version of Hamlet.
Yeah, like that, that we're pulling from other costumes. I'm even managing to get some things in from Pippin, for example, if you can believe that.
That's right. That's right.
It's fun for me.
Now, even though this show takes place during Shakespearean times, is the language dense?
No.
So this is.
Do you want to talk about how the script is put together in terms of the language?
I want to make sure I touch on what you're directing me to touch on.
Well, just the script itself is written.
It's very accessible. It's not written. I mean, there are plenty of nods to actual Shakespearean lines. Like we have glimpses of, the Scottish play and Hamlet and Lear and Henry. So there are actual lines and quotes, but it is not written in iambic pentameter, for example. It's very accessible.
Yeah, it's written in modern language. So to the point where there are moments where the playwright uses sort of modern idioms to create a joke, and so a modern audience would absolutely get it. And you don't. One of the things I liked about it was you don't have to be a Shakespeare aficionado to enjoy the play. You will if you know a little something about Shakespeare, you'll get those extra Easter eggs and sort of have a little layer of enjoyment on top. But we're actually, one of the things that we're doing that I'm really excited about, you talked about legacy and sort of preserving. So since we started the company, we've been, collecting things, photos and pieces of scripts and things like that from past shows. And we're doing the seating for this cabaret style. So there's going to be 18 tables all around the playing space, and the audience will sit at these tables. And so what we're doing is actually this Saturday, Lori and I and a couple other folks will be decoupaging, which I've never done before. Okay. And we're creating the tabletops for each of the 18 audience tables from materials from previous shows. So every table will have a different show. So there will be, there will be the Hamlet table and the Much Ado About Nothing table and the Pippin tables, so that not only ourselves, but our audience members who've been with us since we began can come and sort of get a little piece of our history as well as they enjoy the show. So I'm very excited.
That's really lovely. Get out the Mod Podge.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, she's the expert, so I'm learning from her.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
So the show runs May 12th, 13th, and 14th, so that's a Friday through Sunday, and then the 19th and 20th, which is a Friday, Saturday.
Correct.
And once again, the location is?
The First Church in Marlborough, right here next door in downtown Marlborough.
And how much are tickets?
So tickets for adults are $18. Tickets for seniors are $15, and children are $12. But we're also running a Mother's Day special because I didn't realize that we had scheduled our Sunday matinee on Mother's Day until I was on the phone with my mother. And
She said, "How dare you?"
She did a
I
little
will be
bit. She
there.
was not happy about that. She was like, well, I don't know. We'll see if I can fit that in. And so in order to apologize to my own mother, we're offering for any mother, and it's up to you to decide whether or not you're a mother, any mother can come to the Mother's Day show for just $10.
That's fantastic. I want you to all just break all the legs with the Book of Will. It was so great to have Ghostlight players here on Arts for the Masses. Thanks to you for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. If you are a local theater group, a dance group, an arts group, if you're a nonprofit in Massachusetts and you'd like to be featured on Arts for the Masses, please be in touch. I'd love to have you on the show. We can do it right here in the studio in Marlborough, Massachusetts, or I'm glad to even do it virtually. Thanks once again for tuning in. Take care.